Okay, so in this year, I wanted to talk about a little bit about the kavunas of Purim, and I still haven't decided. This is me, like with preparation, exactly how we're going to do it. But I think it's going to be mostly outside. We will look maybe a little bit at certain selections from the Rav and Shar Kavunas, and then in maybe not so a few other places just to have a picture. But I think saying instead of learning it inside, or we'll get stuck on little details. I think it's better to talk about it in a general sense. And I'll start with I used to tell people, and when I first started learning Penimius Torah, I used to think that Purim in Kavunas of Purim and the Rizal was the easiest. And I told people this, like, if you want to start with Kavunas, if you know, the Purim is the place to start because it's the easiest. Because I used to think that technical means hard, and not technical means easy. But as I've sort of like, I guess, grown a little bit, Baruch Hashem, in learning these things, it's not technical that isn't actually what makes it hard. Technical is something that you just have to sort of, either you get the picture or you don't get the picture. But what really makes it hard is when there's inyunim, even especially when they're not technical, but you have to understand it, like it has to sort of make sense, right? There has to be some sort of a logic to it. And as I've gotten further into kavunas, I've seen that kavunas of Purim is actually not that easy at all. But that wasn't intended to scare anybody away, because we're gonna talk about it in a way that Bez Hashem everyone's gonna gain something, and the hard things, the detailed things, the things that are a little bit challenging, those we'll try to figure out, and hopefully we'll get somewhere. So just as an introduction to this whole thing, because the kavunas of Purim and the Arizal are very, very much connected with the Rizal's understanding of history and how history works. And this is mostly found in Eitz Chaim and Sharmiyat HaYerayach, where the Rizal talks about this. I'm just going to give a general overview, just so that we sort of understand what's going on. First of all, as always, when we get to kavunas of Yom Tov, I mentioned the idea of parts of Hayom and parts of Azmanim. This is an idea that basically means that there's a different track, essentially, a different part entirely of Za and Nik that we're working on parts of Hayom means during the days of the week and Shabbos, right? So the 6 days of the week and then Shabbos Kodesh. And then parts of Hazmanim means the Yom Tovim. Exactly the locations of these things is, I'll tell you, it's not so important to know for our purposes, but parts of Hayomim is actually higher. Parts of Hayomim is in the Chagas of Zanik, Hakluli of the big Zanik, and parts of Azmanim is in the Nehi. But that's not really so important because each of those has an entire koim of 10 spheres. We know that Kol Mashesh the Kalesh Beprat. So essentially, when we're working with parts of Hayomim, we're working with the entire setup and entire parts of Zanik of 10 spheres. And the same thing when we're dealing with parts of Zman, and we're dealing with an entire setup, entire parts of 10 spheres. It just happens to be that those parts are smaller parts in a bigger whole. So I'm just hearing a little bit of background noise. So second. Right. Actually, things look different here. Oh, mute all here. Okay, so I just muted everybody. If you want, I'm still hearing something though. Okay, so you can unmute if you need to say anything or ask something. So anyway, so that's the basic idea, and then in each of these, basically what happens is that there is a whole that they're changing constantly, in the sense that in Zan and Nik we have this idea that sometimes they're ach ba'ach, they're back to back, which is lower level of connection. For those that have been like just Chaim Shir recently, we actually talked about this in detail, right? That the back to back represents a lower level of connection, and then there's the idea of punim b'punim. Punim is a higher level of connection. There's also another idea of that Nik sort of grows to different heights vis-a-vis Zah. Sometimes she stands connected the chuzah of Zah. Sometimes, Bez Hashem, when Mashiach comes, then she's going to stand mamash koima b'koima, parallel to Zah. Exactly. Those also signify different levels of relationship. Because when she's smaller, when she's shorter, so to speak, then the relationship is not as balanced, as not as matched, because they don't see eye to eye literally. They're not set up one against the other perfectly. Whereas when you have them punim bepunim mamish bekoime bekoime, when they're standing mamish equally to each other, then that connection is also more powerful. And these two things change historically over time. And what that means is that for example, in our current situation, and I'm simplifying from Sharmiyat Terach because there's more details, but I'm just giving a general overview, just what's negayah to us. When they're standing ach ba'ach, that's when there's no Beis Hamikdash. When there's no Beis Hamikdash, then there's a sort of like a that or that's between them is not coming down as powerfully. In other words, it's not the fact that the Beis Hamikdash is here or not that determines. It's actually the other way around. When they're not punim bepunim, then the or that comes down is less, and because of that, there's no Beis Hamikdash. Okay, so that's really the way it works. But the Beis Hamikdash signifies that for us. So we're now in a state when they're usually ach ba'ach. But when they're ach ba'ach, that doesn't mean they're always ach ba'ach, because in the parts of Hayomim, when we're dealing with the days of the week, we actually have that they do turn punim bepunim briefly at certain points during the avodah that we do, like for example by Shacharis, when we're building them up during the Shemona Esrei of Shacharis, we're building up Zar, we're building up Nik. Then by Sim Shulam, by the last bracha, they actually do turn punim bepunim, or rather, it's rather in the word Ba'ahava. I'm going to explain soon more in detail. But in the word Ba'ahava in the first bracha of the Shemona Esrei, they're turning punim bepunim, but there's other setups to do. At the end, in the final bracha of Shemona Esrei, there's a zivik, punim bepunim, mazel tov, beautiful. That happens every single day, even when there's no Beis Hamikdash. But it only happens for a brief moment, a brief time. And then of course Shabbos. They're also standing punim bepunim. Shabbos, their zivig is more powerful. They're not just saying punim bepunim, but they're actually ascending to the levels of the higher partzifim and Tzilas. Shabbos, there's a lot going on, even in Gulas. And the same thing is with the parts of Hazmanim and the Yom Tovim. Then we also have that by the Yom Tovim, there's special times where they do turn punim bepunim. Usually Yom Tovim, it's a longer process. Like we have that on Shmini Atzeres they turn punim bepunim, and there's a zivig that happens. But that was after the whole avodah of Rosh Hashanah, Aseret Shiva, Yom Kippur, Sikkas. It was a long process. Parts of Hazmanim takes a lot more koyach and a lot more time than it does in parts of Hayomim. And then also we have the same thing, Pesach and Sfiras Oimer, and then finally by Shvias, right? Once we've done that entire void of the Pesach and the Sfira, then they turn punim bepunim, and there's a zivig Shvias by Missiv. So we have the punims even in the times of the Gulas. The mala that existed when there was a Beis Hamikdash is that they're always punim bepunim, and what exactly that means, then how the kavunas hatfila would be. For example, what are we doing exactly in Shachas Mincha Marav in the weekdays if they're already punim bepunim, and how the Yom Tovim look, how does Rosh Hashanah look if they're already punim bepunim? I don't know. And nobody tells us. The Rizal doesn't tell us. I guess that when Mashiach comes and when we're in that matzif again, then I guess things these things are going to be revealed to us, right? Exactly how that would work. But that's the general way that it works. Now, in order for Zanik to turn from Ach B'Ach to Punim B'Punim, there's something that needs to happen that's called the Nesira. And the way to understand this in a very, very simple and brief way, there's actually a lot of detail in it. We'll talk about maybe more in detail when we go into Rosh Hashanah and Shiva, because over there, every day there's a little part of that happening in the parts of Hazmanim, right? But just in a very brief way, basically the mushal is just like Udam and Chava were originally created back to back, right? And so what had to happen was they had to sort of split them off, which is what Hashem did. So over there it says that Hashem put Hashem put a sleep on Udam Arishan, and so it almost sounds like like an anesthesia to do a surgery, push-up shot, like in the psikim, and it's not push-up shot because Udam Chav we're not Gashmi at that point. We're not talking, but whatever. But in the mushal, right? That's almost what it seems like. And then we're able to cut off Chava from Udam, and then we're able to turn Punim bepunim. So there's an idea called the Nesira. And in that Nesira, what Nesira means, like a cutting, a separation, right, of the two. And in the Nesira, the thing that we see that she had to put the sleep on Udam Arishan in order for this to happen. So the way that this is understood in Penimius Torah is basically the idea is that as long as Za and Nick are ach ba'ach, they're back to back, so in a certain way, they're more connected than when they're punim b'punim. Because when they're punim b'punim, they're separate entities. But you need to have that punim b'punim in order for them to have the higher level of connection of zivik, of actual connection between the two. In other words, when they're ach ba'ach, basically what's happening is that Nick is dependent on Za, right? Which means that, since Za is being the kabul, all the moichin that are coming from Abba Ima, and he has to give over those moichin that he gets in. He has to, those moichin come in. There's chassudim, which is a male force, and there's gviras, which is a female force. And Za basically takes everything. Then he has to give over to Nick, who's attached to him from behind. He has to give over those gviras. He has to give over that feminine principle to Nick. So Nick is dependent on Za. The Rizal says that that's really a lower level of connection, even though it's sort of a greater level of connection. She's dependent on him. She would cease to exist without him, giving her over those gevirs that she needs. But at the same time, since she's now subservient to him, she's dependent on him. So that's not betoichen in the depth of the relationship. It's not such a good relationship, because it's ahava tliya b'dover. This way that Leisham explains it, it's like that comes from Pirkei Avos, where it says that there's a love that's dependent on something. A love that's dependent on something is not a real love, and that's not going to last, right? A love that's einatliya b'dover and a hava that's not dependent on something, that's not hava that really has a quality, and it's more altruistic, right? Because the idea of connecting to someone because you need them, right, is you don't necessarily really want to connect to them, right? It's just you need them. You don't have any choice, right? But then the idea of a relationship where there's a true ahava, a true love between the two, is it's not that I need this person, it's that I really, really be'emes want to connect for altruistic reasons, l'shem shemayim, so to speak, right? So because of that, the ach ba'ach is not ideal. So what happens is that the moichin go out of Za, and that's the idea of this sleep. The Lushan used in the Torah by Udam Rishon is tardaima, and then the Lushan that the Zohar uses and the Rizal uses very frequently is dormita, which is really it's not Aramaic, it's really a Latin term, right? Like you have the word dormitory. In French, to sleep is dormir, right? This word dormita is the Latin word for sleep. I'm not sure exactly why the Zohar uses exactly that term, but we find this many times in Midrashim and Chazal. They use Greek and Roman terms for some reason. A lot of actually someone was asking this yesterday by the Shir, a lot of the words that we use in Kabbalah are actually of Greek origin or Roman origin. Like the word gematria really comes from Greek, right? It's the same word as geometry, right? And then what's it called? Then other words like this, parts of the word parts of, departsifin, the place where the word parts of comes from the Gemara is actually Greek. The D means two, right? And what's it called? And partsifin also comes from pars. I don't remember exactly what the Greek word is, but anyway, but so we use these terms a lot. So the rit is another one of these terms. So basically, the idea is that what happens when we sleep? When we sleep, what happens is our mind departs from us, right? The way that the Zohar tells us is it's not just the person becomes unconscious, but rather what happens is that the neshama actually travels out, and the neshama travels in the higher olamas. So when Za goes to sleep, so to speak, what happens is that the moichin go out of Za. And then the way that the Rizal tells us here in the Drish on Purim is that those moichin go into Nick at that time. And we can be medayik this from the actual, when we're talking about the sleep being put on Udam Arishan, again, in the Psikim, it doesn't tell us that they were back to back. That's something the Chazal supply. In the Psikim, it seems to imply that Udam was by himself. And then we took like a tzela, took like a rib of his and made that into Chava. But it doesn't say, but if we're learning like Chazal that they were actually back to back, It doesn't say in the Pusik that Hashem put a sleep on Udam and on Chava. It says Hashem put a sleep on Udam. So we see that only the Zucher is Kavirchel, is what goes to sleep. So what happens is these moichin go out of Zah, and the moichin go into Nik temporarily, right? While this Nasira, while this splitting off is occurring. And then after that, once the Nasira is done, the moichin go out, and then the moichin go back into Zah, and Kavirchel, it's like Zah wakes up. But now they're put in the punim. So now there's a mala, right? Before they were attached back to back, but now they're attached punim, and they're both conscious, right? Which is kavirchol, right? Which is a mala. So that's basically the way that it works. Again, we don't have to get now into all the details, all the kashas that the Mefarshim ask over here. But the Rizal tells us in different places that it's not mamash really all the moichin that go into Nik. And this makes a problem with the way the Rizal makes the cheshbon here in the dish of Purim. If we have some time at the end, maybe we'll go into it, but it's really not so. There's ways to answer it. Put it this way, right? The Rashash has two mahalchim in how to answer it, but I don't think that to go into so much detail is necessary at this point. Basically, but basically the way that the Rizal puts it over here is that the moichin go out of Zan, those moichin go into Nik. Okay. Now there's a certain interesting thing that happens when these moichin go into Nik, because if we've seen this a lot, so those that have been in the more technical shirim are more familiar with this, that when the moichin go into Zah, so there's moichin that are coming in from Ima and from Abba, right? The way that we explained it, because a lot of times people appreciate when we relate it to ourselves, right? So the idea of moichin coming in is the idea of the person maturing, right? We have that the real moichin, the godless, come in at the bar mitzvah, which is when a person really matures to a certain extent, hopefully, right? And the moichin are coming in from both of our parents, in the sense that our maturity, our development is coming in both from the chinuch we got from our father and the chinuch we got from our mother, right? Both our father and our mother had a very big influence on the way we grew up. And a lot of times, it's the interesting combination of the parents and their personalities and their shittas sometimes that's going to actually affect how the child develops. But so the idea is that the moichin coming from Abba, from Ima, the moichin that are going to be relevant to what we're talking about over here is the moichin that are coming in from Abba. Now, when the moichin are going in from Abba into Zah, basically what happens is that it's the nihi of Abba that goes in, and that neitzach, and that hoid, and that yisoid of Abba are all split off, are all split up into three sections: top section, middle section, and bottom section. So those are going to fit very nicely into Zah, because what happens is that when the neitzach goes into the right side of Zah, then the neitzach of Abba, right? Then the top section of the neitzach fits very nicely into the chachma of Zah, because Zah is smaller than Abba. Right, so a third of a sphere in Abba is going to fit very nicely into one sphere of Zah. So that top third of Neitzach of Abba goes into the Chachma of Zah. The middle third of Neitzach of Abba goes into Chesed of Zah, and the bottom third goes into Neitzach of Zah. So that fits, Neitzach fits very nicely. Hoid also the same thing. The top parak of Hoid goes into the Chachma, goes into the Bina of Zah. The middle parak of Hoid goes into the Gvira of Zah, and the bottom parak of Hoid goes into the Hoid of Zah. And then the middle column, the Yisoid coming in, is exactly the same thing. The Yisoid is going to come into, the top parak of Yisoid is going into Das of Zah, the middle parak of Yisoid is going into Tiferes of Zah, and the bottom parak of Yisoid is going to Yisoid of Zah. So it fits nicely into Zah. Now what happens by Nik is an interesting thing, because Nik is shorter than Zah at this point. When they're standing Ach Ba'ach, when they're standing back to back, usually Nik is standing connected the Chuzah, connected the chest of Zah, just from behind. So what happens is the Nik is a much smaller partsiv. So what ends up happening is when this Nihi of Abba goes out of Zah, and when it goes into Nik, what happens is, since Nik is smaller, so that Yisoid of Abba that's going into the middle column of Zah is going to sort of stick out below the end of Nik, below the bottom of Nik. And that Yisoid of Abba is going to so this is like a very interesting thing, because Yisoid of Abba is something that usually we usually have no shaykhs whatsoever with Abba and with Ima. We only have shaykhs with the lower partzifim, with Zah and Nik, right? But over here, there's a Yisoid of Abba that's sort of being exposed, sticking out below Nik, and coming down into the lower worlds. So we're going to see that the Rizal makes a very big deal out of it.
That would be true even if Nuk was exactly the size of Abba, because the side of the cave is anyways kotzer. And that's the way you're explaining it. The whole thing shouldn't work because if Nick was such a small part of it, then the Netzach and the height also just stick out.
Right, you're right. What does it say in Shar Kavunas? He doesn't say it's because Nick is a smaller parts of.
No, he always says because the side of a Nuk is only is small, is kotzer. The side of Ab is orich thin and long, and the side is wide and short.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was the looks I always saw. Mm-hmm. And that's why it sticks out.
Okay, so maybe maybe I'm getting confused with a kasha, because there's a because there's a psikach like that since Nick is shorter, then there's this problem that really be'emes all of the spheres of Abba would really be sticking out below. But okay, so push-up shot is whatever the answer is to the fact that Nick is shorter. The push-up shot is because Nick is the soid of a Nick is shorter than the soid of a zucher, right? Usually in a general sense that's true, right? We know that the soid of a zucher is something that's more external, and the Nick and the Nikaiva, a female, her yisoid is mostly the reichem, which is inside. There's only like a little tiny little element that's sticking out. So then in any Nikaiva puzzle, even if she would be the same size as then right, that yisoid of Abba would be sticking out, below. And so that idea of the yisoid of Abba sticking out below Nick is something that means that a very, very high level Abba, which you have no shaychus with, actually comes down into the worlds of Biyah, into the worlds that are below Nick, and that's like going to be a big focus of the Rizal's explanation of what exactly is happening on Purim. Okay, but then when they turn Purim bepunim, that sort of goes, that Yisoid of Abba is no longer there because the Moich go out of Nick and go back into Zah, everything's back in its regular state, but Zah and Nick are Purim bepunim. Okay, so with that, we can go into what the Rizal says happened historically at the time that the Purim story happened. Right, because in the Masa of Purim, basically this was after the destruction of the first Bais HaMikdash. So after the destruction of the first Bais HaMikdash is a time where Zanik are ach ba'ach, right? They're back to back, and so there's less shefa coming down, and that was manifested in this world. The reason was because of the virus that the Klal Yisrael did, and that manifested in this world as the Bais HaMikdash being destroyed, which is a symbol. The Bais HaMikdash is a symbol of that zivig of Zanik, of Punim bepunim. The whole Bais HaMikdash is described even in Chazal, even in Nigla, in terms that are somewhat intimate. Like Chazal point out the idea that the what's it called, that the Badai Urim that were sticking out of the curtain, they were pointing, they were causing these two protrusions out of the curtain, right? The Paraychas, the Chazal point out that was like Kavyuchal, like in the Kaiva's, like in the Kaiva's dadim, like the breasts of the Kaiva. And there's these, we find these things in Nigla also. In this we find tons of it all the time. This idea of different things in the Bais HaMikdash being symbolic of the idea of Zivig. But basically, so the idea is that when that zivig of Punim bepunim between Zah and Nick ceased, then the Bais HaMikdash was destroyed, and the Eden are now in Gulas, and Zah and Nick are ach ba'ach. But what's happening when Zah and Nick are ach ba'ach? We know that the hashgucha of the world, the way that Hashem Kavyuchal governs the world, is through Zah, usually through Zah, right? And when Zah and Nick are ach ba'ach, there still is a hashgucha. It just happens to be that since Zanik are not Punim bepunim, the shefa that's coming down is not so great, so it comes out that the hashgucha that's coming down to the world is less, and because it's less it's less nigla, it's less bekoyach. So because of that manifests as gulas, and the Eden are not in Eretz Yisrael, and there's they're having a difficult time in the places where they are, and so on and so forth. All these different things, all these different difficulties, right, manifest as a result of that. But then what happens is right when something's when Zanik are about to turn Punim Bepunim, there's this Dormita that happens. And when the Dormita happens and the Moichin go out of Za, when the Moichin go out of Za, Kavyuchel, it's like there's no Hashgacha from Za. And I'm saying it's like because, we have to understand exactly what it means. But when Kavyuchel, it's like Za's asleep. When Kavyuchel, when a person's asleep, then they're not responsive. Right? When Za's asleep, it seems like the Hashgacha from Za is not coming down. So at the time of the Dermita, at the time where we're actually separating Za, and in order to turn them Punim Bepunim, the darkness is the greatest, right? And that's why really it sort of manifests in this way, that right before a very big Ge'ilah, right before a very amazing thing, there's usually a time of particular darkness, of particular challenges, right? And the chassidus talk about this a lot. Is because of this idea that this Dormita looks like the Hashgacha went away out of Za. Now there still is some sort of Hashgacha going on because Nick is not asleep, like we said. So there's still Hashgacha that's coming from Nick, but since Nick is much more, Za himself is Bechinas Din to a certain extent, right? But since Nick is much more a Bechina of Din, so therefore it seems like a very, very dark time. And it seems like a time of yeah.
I'm sorry, didn't you say before that didn't you say before the B'shasnas the Nesira, the Moichin of the Zohar goes out of Zohar but goes into the Noik?
Yeah.
So she gets it automatically. She gets it immediately. So what's the problem?
Right. No, she gets those Moichin, but the problem is that those Moichin are since she's a part of that's more Din, more parts of Din than Za, right? Because Dina the Mochisadina and all these different ideas. So because of that, the Hashgacha that's coming to the world is much more mitzad din, right? So
the Moichin of Zaz, the Zaz Moichin in her, Zaz a Chazocher. What's the difference if they're connected and Zaz gives her the Moichin, or the ganze Moichin again, or so then we get her in there. She has his Moichin.
But it's not really his Moichin. It's really they're really coming from Abba ve'Imma, right? The Moichin are like oiris, and those oiris are going to manifest differently, depending on which kailim they go into, right? So when they go into Nick, it's going to come out in much more of a din sort of a way than when they come in to Zah. You hear? Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, you heard what I said?
Yeah. You're saying when she gets his license, it has a nishtana.
Right, because the moichin themselves are like oiris, and the oiris only manifest the kalim they go into. Right, so when it goes into Nick, it manifests as more din than what it is in Zah.
Like the clear water, in the red keli. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so then that's the idea. But then at the same time, you have, and we're gonna have to figure this out. But at the same time that at that dermita you have something that looks totally like a hopeless situation. That the hashgacha is only coming mitzad Nick, and it looks like very, very bad for there's a lot of din, and it's very bad for Klal Yisrael. But still, at the same time, you have this Yisoid Abba that is being revealed at that time, which is something that's a very, very high or being revealed. So again, what's going on? Is it a time of darkness and hopelessness, or is it a time that there's a very big or? So the idea is that it's sort of both. And
also, once it comes out that this oil was Nisgala the whole time of the Churban Beis Hamikdash, the whole 70 years, not just Purim.
No, it's only by the time of the Dermita. The Dermita is only at the end of the 70 years, L'choira. There's after
the Churban they became Ach Ba'ach,
right?
But there was no the Nesir was first later.
Right. Push it, Pshat.
Okay, fine, good. I hear.
Okay. I mean, there is on one place, I think in Pri Eitz Chaim or something, where it seems to say that the Nasir was the entire 70 years, but everyone has kashas on that. Push Pshat is that it was only a mamish at the end.
Okay, fine.
Okay, so anyway, so basically, what happens is that we have to understand this. What does it mean that it's a time of the greatest darkness, and then yet there's this Yisoid Abba coming in? How does that manifest? How does that work? So we're gonna get to that in a second. Yeah. So someone chatted that just like it's darkest right before the dawn. Right. So we have this idea too, right? That we see that there too, that concept. Right. So then finally, so this is when the Eden were in exile in Bovel. Everything was ach ba'ach, and then the time the Purim story was this dermita, was this end period, which was the darkest period, so to speak. And right after that, of course, what happened was that Baruch Hashem, thanks to Esther, right? Esther and Achashverosh had their Yovesh. The Yovesh was their son. Okay, Madrushim, if it was really Esther's son or not, the Madrushim deal with already. But Al Kapunim, he felt like he was Esther's son. And so then Der Yovesh had a very, very great respect for Klal Yisrael, and Der Yovesh allowed them to build a Beis Hamikdash, and that was already, even though we could say historically, because Der Yovesh was Esther's son, so he decided that he should give them permission to build the Beis Hamikdash, right? So we could explain it all the way historically, but Be'emes, what's happening behind the scenes, right? Penimius is what's happening is that Zanik turned Purim Bepunim, so the fact that they turned Purim Bepunim allowed that that the Beis Hamikdash could be rebuilt at that time. So that's the Puship shot, and then the Rizal explains that this whole idea of Haman deciding to destroy the Klal Yisrael, right? And
would that be interesting?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting to say that the Nimshal and the Marshal that Achashverosh, the orals, or the Tatif, the Zohar, and the Mokum the Zohar to have the child. That's more than nice.
The what? Sorry, I didn't understand. The what?
I'm saying it sounds like the Marshal the Nimshal of that the Za and the Nook, then the Ruchnisdik became upon him, and down here Lamata, the Makbil upstairs is the Achashverosh.
No, I didn't mean that. No.
Oh, okay. It sounds like it.
Yeah, no, I just meant to say that down here we could give like logical reasons why David decided to build the Beis Hamikdash, but really be'emes, those logical reasons down here have nothing to do with anything, right? It's all really happening because in Shemayim there was Zivik Zanik. I didn't mean to imply that Achashverosh and Esther were parallel to Zanik.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
All right. So what's it called? So then the result tells us that when Haman told Achashverosh, that let's destroy the Klal Yisrael, the reason why Haman picked this time is because Haman knew what was going on. The Arizal says he was a very big astrologer. It's interesting that that's the expression they use. It's probably based on a medrash or something, because astrologers, what astrologers know about Atzilus, but it seems like that Haman knew what was going on upstairs, and he knew that there was this idea of this dermita now, which is a place where Zak Kavyuchel is like he's sleeping, and there's Guchel is coming down from Nick, which is more a bechina of din, and because of that, he said, "Oh, now there's a perfect time to destroy the Klal Yisrael and sort of stop this whole process," because he also, I guess, knew that that means that there's about to be a Purim Bepunim, and the Klal Yisrael are about to get their Beis Hamikdash back, and things are about to get good again. So he said, now's the time, it's now or never, so to speak, to go and destroy them, while the Hashgacha is on this very shvach level that it's on now. And this is the way that the Rizal explains that this medrash, the medrash says that when Haman said to Achashverosh, that there's a certain nation, right, which is referring to the Klal Yisrael, but that word is related to the word Yushan, which means sleeping. So it's like Haman's telling Achashverosh that their God is sleeping, Elikayim Yushan, right? That and Puship Shad in the Medrash Alpi Nigel is just like Achashverosh was. Haman was just saying, "Oh, look, they're in a very bad state. They're Hashem's not helping them, so it looks like he's sleeping." But on a deeper level, he's actually saying, "No, it's dermita. It's this idea of the sleep and zah, which is a good time to get them, so to speak, because it's a time of darkness." But the thing that he wasn't cheshboning on was this idea of the Yesod Abba coming in, because basically the way that the idea is that since Abba has nothing to do really be'emes with Hashgacha and the Anhuga of this world, like we've said many times, that really it's only Zah and Nick that have to do with the Hashgacha of this world. When this Yesod Abba comes in, this Yesod Abba doesn't come in a way like open miracles that crazy things are happening Rishon being struck with lightning bolts from Shemayim, or the Eser Makkos, or that's not how it manifests. It manifests as sort of like an anomaly in the system, something strange happening, some sort of a strange event or person or factor in the whole cheshbon that you wouldn't really expect even. 1 second, there's a lot of background noise. Right? Something that you would never expect to be the Yeshia, which actually ends up being the Yeshia. So like, in order for us to understand this a little bit better, the Leisham has the whole thing on this. I think it's based on the Gru in Safed Tznisa. We didn't see this Gru yet, but he has the whole thing that the idea of Mashiach coming, Mashiach is also a Hizgal of Yisoid Abba, like Mordechai was. Because I didn't tell you this part yet, but Mordechai is that Hizgal of Yisoid Abba that happened at that time. And because right now we're in Ach Ba'ach, and of course when Mashiach comes, then it's going to be Punim B'Punim, the greatest Purim that ever was. And in between you have to have that Dormita, that darkest time. And in that darkest time, there's going to be a person who no one's gonna factor into their cheshbonos. In other words, here we have like Putin and Trump and not Trump, Biden and all these different people, these different leaders are all making their cheshbonos and their calculations and you know and there's something that they're not factoring in because they'll never dream to factor it in. There could be one little tiny person somewhere that no one even thinks is anything special that could turn the whole thing upside down. Right? And that's this idea of Yisoid Abba. Yisoid Abba doesn't reveal itself openly because it's something that's so far removed from this world. It reveals itself in a very hidden type of a way, right? So that's why Chazal stress about Mashiach, that Mashiach, no one's going to know these Mashiach. Chazal say, you know, the Psikim say, Uni Roichav ala Chamor, right? Chazal say that all these different things that the Mashiach is like this Mitzayra sitting at the gate of Rome and unraveling his bandages, like someone you would never think would be the Goyal of the Kal Yisrael. There's a word for it in English. I forgot what the word is. Like something that's totally unexpected, like some sort of something factor or something, like a totally random factor, something you would never, none of the people making the big plans would ever calculate it into the picture. So here's Haman Achashverosh making these plans because it's a dermita, but guess what? The dermita means there's a Yisoid Abba that's coming down too. And a Yisoid Abba coming down is going to manifest in some sort of a hidden way as something or someone that could totally turn everything upside down without anybody knowing it. And that, of course, was the whole idea of Mordechai, right? Because Mordechai was this old deed sitting in the chutz of the Beis HaMelech. Nobody took him seriously. He's just sitting over there, and Haman is getting agitated and frustrated. Haman didn't realize that this is all part of the plan. That Haman's personal emotions and his gava and his low self-esteem is going to play into the factor of saving the Kal Yisrael in the end, because really, right, it was the fact that he couldn't soivel, he couldn't bear that Mordechai that doesn't bow down to him, right? That really set this whole story into motion. And then Mordechai, of course, was the one that raised Esther, and Esther ended up, being a very part of this Gila too. Bekitzer, the whole thing was in this hidden and concealed way. So the Rizal goes as far as to say that he calls it this ha'ura, this or of Yisoid Abba that comes down. He calls it Ha Mordechai, which means he's not using Mordechai as a proper name. He's like saying the Mordechai. He's using it. He's using Mordechai as the name for this ha'ura, for this or that's coming down of Yisoid Abba. And specifically, I forgot to say this because all the chassidus talk about Yisoid Abba, but specifically it's really a teres Yisoid Abba that actually is Nisgala. It's that bottom third, that bottom parak of Yisoid Abba, which is called the teres Yisoid, which is actually what actually comes down and is revealed in the lower worlds. So then it comes out that Mordechai was sort of the way that this Yisoid Abba is revealing itself. Somebody asked this before at the end of one of the shirim like a while ago. I think you asked this, right? That Yisoid Abba is as a rochnis koyach, right? If Haman would have succeeded in killing Mordechai like he wanted to, he would have been able to stop the Yisoid Abba from coming down. The Yisoid Abba would come down anyways. I didn't actually hear this. I didn't actually see anyone ask this question, but it seems to be that the way that it's manifesting is through Mordechai. That was like the way that Kavichul, that Hashem's plan was for it to manifest. I think theoretically, if Chas v'Shalom Haman would have succeeded in killing Mordechai, I don't think that would have stopped the Yisod Ab from coming down, and I think that it would have come down in some other type of a way, But Lamasa, Hashem's plan was that this is the way that it came down, and Haman really at this point didn't really have anything to do with it, right? And so I asked a long question over here. Let me just see. Okay, someone asked a question about that we see all these complicated things that are going on, and then how practically do we apply this into connecting to Purim? Okay, so we're gonna get to that, because so far we haven't even gotten to Purim yet. So we've just gotten to historically, what was happening at that time. But anyway, so that Yisod Abba was that Teres Yisod Abba was that koyach of Mordechai that turned everything upside down, and Haman's whole plan was foiled. Of course, he didn't succeed in destroying the Kal Yisrael. His goal was really to prevent the Purim B'Purim from happening, because once you don't have a Kal Yisrael, so he figured, once the Kal Yisrael aren't here anymore, then the whole system, the whole point of Zanik being Punim Punim isn't really a point anymore, and there wouldn't be a Bais Hamikdash, and so on and so forth. Even on this, you can ask a question: what's Haman's cheshbon? If there would be no Kal Yisrael, the whole world would disappear. The whole world cease to exist, right? As we know that since the Kal Yisrael are the bottom of this whole system, and we're the ones being malaman and doing all these tikkinim. So what exactly would happen if the Kal Yisrael would be destroyed? That would be of a benefit to Haman, because it wouldn't suddenly be that Haman becomes the new Klal Yisrael, right? It would just be boom, right, gone, right? So that also you can ask. Perhaps maybe you can say that Haman, again, he missed this whole Mordechai point too at first. He was making the plan with Achashverosh. It was only later when he realized that Mordechai represented this Ateres Yisrael Abba, that he was trying to prevent Mordechai from, he was trying to destroy Mordechai to prevent this Hora from stopping him. But it seems like he didn't really have the whole picture. It seems he only had like certain parts of the picture, or whatever, whatever was Min HaShamayim, whatever was B'Sher to happen at that time. But anyways, so that's basically the idea of what happened at the Purim story. And then of course the real goal was when Zanik turned Punim B'Punim again, which was at the beginning of the second Beis Hamikdash, and then the rest is history. But the idea is that the result tells us that this sort of happens every single year when Purim occurs. When Purim occurs, what happens is that these oiros and these koichos and these same things that occurred at that time occur again. So we have to ask, what exactly occurs again? Because we're here now in the Gulas, and Zanik are ach ba'ach, and then it happens to be that a few times, like we said, by Shach, a few times during the day, and a few times then on Shabbos, right, on Yom Tovim, they turn Punim B'Punim. They're usually ach ba'ach. What exactly is the or that comes down? So the result tells us that there's a Nes Purim, there's a miracle of Purim that happens. And just like we have with the Nes Chanukah, we have a similar type of a thing. A Nes means that the rules of nature are being broken. So just like over here, we understand in this world that a Nes means that the rules of nature are being broken. So too in Shemayim, a Nes means that the rules in Shemayim are so to speak, are being broken. So usually what happens to us nowadays is when is this Ateres Yisrael Abba revealed? At any time that there's a Dermita happening. And the time that Dermita happens for us during the weekdays, right now, is the Dermita happens when, what's it called? By the word Bahava in Shemona Esrei. When we say that word Bahava in Shemona Esrei, that's when the Nesira happens. Then at that point, I'll be the Kamunah, so the result, you're Mechavan that entire, because until then, Zamnik were Ach Ba'ach, they're back to back. By the word Bahava, you're Mechavan the entire Nesira. In short, everything you're being Mechavan the Seres you made Shiva day by day is all you're Mechavan at once in that word Bahava. It takes depending on if you're a beginner mechavan or if you're a mechavan that's been doing it for a while. It could take as little as 15 seconds, right? It for any people probably takes maybe a minute. I know that word in Bahava takes a while. But then after a Bahava, that's it. They're already, that was the Nasira. Then they turn and put in Bepunim, and that Yisrael Abba is gone. And so it was there for a few seconds. And then when a regular person was down without the kavunas, in a second or less, a half a second, is as long as that Yisrael Abba comes in at that point. But so the idea is that it's a
sorry, Rabbi. Is
Yeah.
that at the repetition, the Chazara, or when we do it silently?
So in short, both, because what happens is that, but really it's a different track. The Chazaras Hashatz is happening in a slightly different part of Zah, where the silent Shur Esrei is happening. So it's happening in both in a different section. That's the short answer. For the long answer, we'll have to wait till we have a shir in the Kavunas, where we'll explain it more in detail.
Thank you.
Yeah, but so basically, so it's something that only comes down for a very, very short time. Now, what the Rizal and the Rashash and everyone explains that happens on Purim is the Nes Purim, the miracle of Purim is that Yisoid, that Teres Yisoid Abba that comes down by Be'ahava stays down, and the idea is that how long does it stay down? So the way the Rizal explains it is that really. And again, there's a whole discussion, because the Rizal really is going to say that the mitzvahs of Purim that we do, reading the Megillah and the Siddur, those continue that, or the Mamshech, they continue that Yisoid, the Teres Yisoid Abba that came down to keep coming down the whole day. And so then the question is, if we're the ones doing it, right, through the mitzvahs of Purim, then how is it a Nes? How is it something that a Nes usually means that Hashem's doing it? And the Lushan in Shara Kavanah says Mashma Hashem Berachma. He says Lushan like that Hashem in His great mercy allows this order to come down. If we're doing it through the mitzvah Purim, then how is this Hashem Berachma? It's something that we're being mamshich. So to that, there's a bunch of different answers. One answer is that to be mamshechet from the word ba'ahava in Shemona Esrei, in the first bracha, until we read the Megillah, that's the Nes. And after that, it comes b'yadayni, it comes through us. That's one answer. Another answer is that what do you mean? The very fact that Hashem gave us these mitzvahs that allow this or to remain down here, that itself is the Nes Purim. In other words, Hashem didn't have to do that, right? The fact that Hashem gave us that itself is the miracle. And we know that Hashem likes that the miracles should have our involvement in them to a certain extent. The Nes Chanukah also was a Nes, but it was through the Chashmanuim, right? And in every Nes, and even in the most open Nisim ever, which were a total anomaly, which almost never have such open Nisim like you had in Yitzias Mitzrayim by the Makkos, right? It was still through Moshe. Right, Moshe still had to, Moshe and Aharon still had their involvement in it, and the Kriyas Yams of Moshe had to hit the sea, right? Because Hashem always wants our involvement to be there, even in a miracle, so to speak. Because like we mentioned before, the way that we're designed is we're designed to want to have a part in things and want to feel like we accomplish things. So even if things are miraculous, those miraculous things, we still want to have a shaykhus to, and we want to be involved in it. We don't want it just to come, without our involvement. So because Hashem always involves us in it. So in a certain sense, you could say that yes, it's a Nes, this idea that this Yisoid Abba is able to stay down the whole day Purim, but it's a Nes that's happening at least partly through us. So the result tells us that through reading the Megillah, we sort of, because the Megillah itself is symbolic of this Teres Yisoid Abba, because he says that the Megillah itself, the way it is, a scroll is like a long thing. It's it looks like a Yisoid in a certain way. The result has different kinds of remuzim too, to exactly why the word Megillah comes from the word Megala, to reveal, because the idea is that this usually concealed Yisoid Abba is now being revealed throughout Purim, and just the idea of reading the Megillah, the Kriya Moeres Azman, we read the Megillah and read this idea of how historically at the time of Purim, this Yesod Abba, this Ateres Yesod Abba came down and changed everything, and that whole miracle. Through reading it, we're mamshech, we continue to be mamshech and bring it down. Derech Agav, we won't have time to go into this, but the result tells us, not in Shar Kavunas, but in Pri Eitz Chaim you have, and the Rishash has a whole list of them. Then you find these in the Sedirim for Purim. That in the Megillah itself, there's tons and tons and tons and tons of Shaimus hidden within the Megillah in different places. Not openly, because we know that openly the Shaimus isn't even mentioned once in the Megillah. Right, the Megillah reads as almost like a secular, almost like a secular document. Like it's literally like some people actually say this is the reason why Hashem's name is not mentioned there, is because this was meant to be also put into the historical records of the Persian kings, so they had to keep it like parif, right? But we see the miracle in the story as we go through the story. But the point is that Hashem's name is hidden in there tons and tons and tons of times. In Rosh Taivus and Sefer Taivus, you have the Shem Havaya there many times. Ekye, Aleph Kai Vuv Kai, Shaimus from the Ayin Bais Shaimus. You have tons of Shaimus all over the Megillah, right? But all of this is sort of this the idea that hidden within that seemingly secular story of Achashvarosh getting married and Haman and Mordechai, hidden in that story you have this or that's coming down, which is a very, very powerful or, except it's hidden, which is that idea of that Yesod Abba. So reading the Megillah is mamshech that or, and then after we read the Megillah, then in order to be continually mamshech that or is the Sida's Purim. So because that the Rishash says very emphatically that a person should have the Sida as soon as he comes home from Shachris, and in order to continue that Amshach of the or from what's it called from the Kriyas Megillah and really from Ba'ahava of Shona Esrei, to continue that or coming is the idea of the Sida. So really the Rishash says wash right after Shacharis. Some of the Talmidei Rishash emphasize the idea of continuing the Sida the entire day, because the idea is that if the idea of the Sida is that continues the or coming down, so then it pushes up on the Rishash, it's mashma, you eat your Sida, and then that Hamshach is going to be enough already to keep it going throughout the day. But what's it called? But it seems like some of these Hamidim said, no, if you want to be mamshech the entire day, so be mamshech the Sida the entire day. So they basically was just keep eating to make sure that you're always you don't want to have a shiloh with benching afterwards. So you just keep eating and so on and so on. You draw out that Sida through the entire day. And then this idea of how many people have a minig of washing after mincha later on during the day. Push-up shot al pi kabul should wash in the morning after Shacharis. But then there are actually some sources in Kabbalah that mention some of the Mefarshim on the Rishash that mention the idea of also washing after mincha again, because even though there's no Kriyas HaMegillah by mincha, because it seems like that Kriyas HaMegillah of Shacharis has enough koyach to keep that or going throughout the day. But since mincha already sort of goes into a new zman, because we have this idea that Mariv and nighttime is associated with Kailim Chitzoinim, and Shachar is associated with Kailim Penimius, and Mincha is associated with Kailim Emtzuim. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. But it just means different aspects of or coming into Kailim. So then perhaps you need another Sida after Mincha in order to keep the or going into the Kailim Emtzuim, which is by Mincha time. Okay, but if you're eating the Sida the whole day, then anyways you're mamshech anyways. So I guess that would depend on the person's minig. But okay, so that's one thing, and then the idea of the matunas of yoinim and the mishloach munas is it seems to be like a little bit of a different idea. It seems to be that the matunas of yoinim and mishloach munas are taken in Nick herself to be able to be makabel these oiros of Yesod Abba. So then what's it called? So then the Shem Susan asked the question. So then maybe since we're already bringing that horror of Yisoid Abba by the Hav of Shmona Esrei of Shacharis, and then we continue drawing those orders down through the Megillah line and then through eating the Seder. And if the Mashiach Munas and the Matunas of Yonim are taken in Nick in order to prepare for those orders, maybe you should give those before Shacharis. Right, that's what the Shem Susan asks. And in fact, interesting enough, the Sanzeruv, this was actually Sanzeruv's minik. He actually was making those mitzvahs before Shacharis in order to fulfill that. But the Shem Susan has episode mahalach that I don't remember exactly what he says, but he has some sort of a mahalach to answer it up that even though those are tikim and nik, but which really perhaps should be before, but it's fine if you do them afterwards too. I don't remember exactly the reason he says, but anyway, that's the idea of those mitzvahs in PM. The idea is mishloach munas ish l'ra'ahi is a friend to another, which is basically this idea of this Yisoid Abba being mamshich down. Ish coming from Abba l'ra'ahi, coming to Zan to Nick, and then he says that the idea he doesn't mention Shar Kavunas, I don't think, except in the end of Shar Kavunas, there's like drishim there at the end, which are not from the Rizal, which Rosh Chaim Vital brings down there, but you find this in Priya Eitz Chaim, and then the idea of the Matunas Lev Yoinim is the idea that Nick is a Evyoin, Nick is a Bechinas, we call her Dalit because she's associated with the word Dal, with this idea of poverty, so to speak, because she has no light of her own. And this giving the Matanos Lev Yoinim, so to speak, is making that a chuna and Nick to be makabel these orders of Yisoid Abba that are coming down. Now, one more thing that I'll add, which is an interesting thing, is that this Bahava of Shemona Esrei and this Yisoid Abba that's coming down then is in parts of Hayomim, right? That's in the avoida of the everyday. But L'choira Purim is an aspect of parts of Hazmanim, because part of Purim is a Yom Tov, and when the Rizal is numbering the Yom Tovim associated with parts of Hazmanim in Drish Bais Moyed in Eitz Chaim, where he's talking about the different Yom Tovim, he counts Purim among those Yom Tovim that are associated with parts of Hazmanim. So then, if the entire Yisoid Abba that we bring down by the Havas with parts of Hayomim, so what's happening exactly parts of Hazmanim wise? So in this the Rashash explains that's also part of what's happening by the Kriyas HaMegillah, because there's a steer in the Rav. In one place, the Rav says that that what's it called? That the reading the Megillah is to continue to be a mamshich that or of Yisoid Abba, which that we don't understand means the or that came down by Behava. In another place, the Rav seems to imply that no, this is actually causing that dermita to happen and causing that Yisoid Abba to extend out. So it seems like a contradiction. So then basically the way that this is understood, I think this is also the Shem Susan, I think, is that really there's two things happening. There's really in parts of Hayomim, that Yisoid Abba that's coming down by Behava, we're continuing out throughout the day. And then the parts of Hazmanim, we're actually doing it from fresh when we read the Megillah. We're bringing down that Yisoid Abba over there. And then the Sida is to continue the Amshucha of that afterwards. Okay, so that's that. Now about the Sida, right? The Rizal says two important things about the Sida. First, the Rizal says this idea that the Sida refers to this moichin coming in from Abba into Nick, because he has this idea that the Achila we know, that the Sida we know is there's a mitzvah of Achila and a mitzvah of Shtia. There's a mitzvah of eating and a mitzvah of drinking. So Achila, he says, is Ochel Yid Kai, which Yid Kai refers to moichin coming into Nick, right? Because Yid Kai is Chacham and Bina. And then Shtia is Shas Yid Kai, which is again referring to Moichin coming into Nick from Av Ima. The Ben Ish Chai actually says that since the Rizal has this remes of Uchel Yid Kai and Shas Yid Kai, so you should really eat 15 courses by the Purim Sida, and you should drink 15 cups of wine. That's the way that what's it called? That's the way that the Ben Ish Chai says to do it. I don't know if anyone. I'm sure there are people that do it that way, but it's rather a lot to eat and probably rather a lot to drink too. Regarding this idea of the drinking on Purim, the Rizal has a very interesting sort of a cheshbon there. We have that Chazal tell this is like a very unusual thing in Chazal, because Chazal usually Bichlal, even in the Torah, right? Drinking wine is a lot of times associated with not such positive things, right? We have the Chetu the Mauritian, where the Chetu the Mauritian, we have the Medrash that says, and the Zohar says that it was grapes, that it was wine. We have Noach. There's a bunch of these things. We know that the wine was also something that was kodesh in a certain sense. We used it in the Bais Hamikdash, right? And so it has a certain type of a kedusha to it. We find Avram, but Avram with Malchit Tzedek, that Avram also over there. There's also an Indian of wine over there. So we do find some positive things about it, but certainly for over drinking, for getting shikr, that Chazal don't have such a or the Torah doesn't have such a positive viewpoint on. We find many times in Mishle and in Koheles that it's talked about that it's not such a good thing, not such a positive thing, and Chazal themselves. But over here by Purim, Chazal tells this interesting thing that a person should drink. They should know the difference between Baruch Mordechai and Ur Haman. You have this idea of drinking to a very, very large extent. It seems to be that, and the way that the Rizal explains it is that a person has to literally go out of his mind. He actually uses that word, because the Rizal says that the idea is to get to a place where you don't see the difference between Baruch Mordechai and Or Haman, where you see that everything is toif. Yeah, you have to sort of get to a higher place. And the Rizal says that the reason is because there's a nitzitz kudesh, there's a holiness, even in Haman there is. But since we're not able to usually see it, so that nitzitz kudesh is neglected. We're not able to give any sort of a ticket to that nitzitz kudesh that's in Haman, because our minds are so resistant to the idea of seeing anything good in Haman. I guess when a person drinks to a certain extent, and his mind, his mind is not so clear anymore, then he taps into. He could potentially. It's a hit or miss. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. But you could sort of tap into a place where there's this idea of where you connect to this place where everything is good, and you can see that goodness in that nitzitz in Haman, and be mashpia, whatever that means, mashpia psatikin to that nitzitz in Haman. So the reason I mentions this idea, and so you see, Yidel chatted over here that from Menachem you have this idea of drinking on Purim is associated with taking a bris, even though during the year it could be or could lead to the opposite, right? So you have this idea sort of because the idea is that you're tapping into this Yisoid Abba, which is bris, right? Which is Teres Yisoid Abba specifically, which is the Mukama bris mamish, right, from a very high place, from Abba. So in that type of way, it's taking the bris. This idea of being yotzim medatoi to a place where you transcend everything and everything is good is actually the side of that Yisoid Abba itself. Because remember that the whole idea of judging and toiv and ra and this whole thing is all in Za'anik, right? Higher than that is this idea of this idea of ashpua, even to someone who's not necessarily deserving of it. We have in the Rizal tells us, I think in Priyatz Chaim, that what's it called, that the whole year the Gabbat Tzedukah is Zah, and that means that the one who's deciding, and he's using the word Gabbat Tzedukah as a mushal, because we have on Purim we have this mitzvah of giving tzedukah to everybody. Even if the person's not someone who seems to be on the level, we still give, right? So that's Purim. But the whole year is not like that. The whole year we can ask them for their certificate. Show me your certificate from the VAT, right? So the reason is because the whole year Zaz, the Gabbat Tzedukah, so to speak. So over there, everything is determined by schis, if the person's rui, if the person not rui. But on Purim, since this Yisoid Abba is there, and this Yisoid Abba is mashpia, afu b'shayne rui, afu b'shayne kadai, it comes from a higher place. So because of that, kol haposhad noistam loy, and that means that really we too have this idea of kol haposhad noistam loy, that we can really be'emes tap into and ask for things even if not worthy for them, if we're zoich to tap into that or of Yisoid Abba. And remember that since that or of Yisoid Abba comes down in a concealed way and in a hidden way, right? So it's not necessarily going to manifest as open miracles, but in a subtle way, right? A person could see a transformation and could see things opening up for him, and him being able to tap into new types of oiris on Purim, and following that from the hashpos that we get on Purim. Okay, so I guess that basically more or less covers it, I guess. Just wanted to say that Bez Hashem, I'm going to send out an email, but on Purim itself, I know that we have some people here from Toronto, some people not from Toronto, whoever's in town, I would very, very much, those that come know that I really, really enjoy it when people from the Shirim come to visit. If you can, if you have time, if it works out for you. I think it's gonna be roughly from, let's say, maybe 12:30 and on, I guess, that I'm going to be eating the Sida over here. And so whoever can make, and I'm going to be here more or less the whole day, until I have to go down Mincha. So whoever can make it, that would be very appreciated. Obviously no Shirim until Motzei Shabbos. Motzei Shabbos will continue the Eitz Chaim Shir, and next week the Shirim should be on a regular schedule. Okay, so someone asked. Okay, this I don't know. I don't know anything about these things. Could Putin be a Gilgal of Haman and Trump a Gilgal of Achashverosh? I have no clue. I don't know. We would have to ask the Rizal. Whatever it is, the one thing that we can for sure say is that bigger things are happening. Just like we mentioned before about the Purim story itself. People are making their cheshbonos, people are making their calculations. People are calculating their next move in this whole thing, right? But ultimately, everything is part of a greater story, and at the end, we're going to see how it all fits together. As Hashem. Okay. All right, everyone.
Sure.
My pleasure.
This year I'm not in town. I'd love to come, but I'm not in town.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, you'll be missed. But okay.
I'll bear what you were saying. The Swarm said that the bunch of the kind of mitzvahs. So the bunch of they say that there's what should I call it? Push it down here. There was bet by the Bashefer, so he's also called Push it could be listener. So they'll say what we were saying. How's the version of Kaimad Loyoda?
No.
I cook this of Yiddish Mitzvah Shaveris. I cook this of our home and the Baruch I cook this of the Pnim.
Beautiful. Very nice.
Okay. Thank you so much for everything.
A wonderful Purim, everyone. My pleasure.
Very important.
My pleasure.
I just had another thought. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just thinking that could we say that Mashiach is associated with Yom Kippur? And let's say Moshe would be Purim? Does that make sense to say?
You saw this somewhere?
No, that Yom Kippur is Mashiach. I've seen that. Moshe is with Purim. I only have seen that Moshe is Netzach and Netzach is Purim. Not that I haven't seen a direct association, but I was just thinking because by the only time before Purim that the survival of Klal Yisrael was threatened was by the Chet Egel. And now you see the same thing happening again, and since then it's never happened. I mean, at least that we know of. So it seems to be that Moshe has that power to sort of save Klal Yisrael through his own self-sacrifice, through his own.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense because, like you said, I've also never seen it clearly. Well, the truth is there's sometimes they talk about how what's it called, that the Goyalim, the people that saved Klal Yisrael from all their different distresses, were a mem with an aleph. So you have Moshe and Aharon by Yetzias Mitzrayim. You have Mordechai and Esther by Purim, and then by Mashiach you have Mashiach and Eliyahu. So So in that
Yeah.
sort of way, you do see that connection of Moshe to Mordechai, right? So I
That's
hear.
very interesting because literally just today I heard somebody was saying that it also works with gum. That I forgot exactly how we matched it up, but also there was a certain pusik that says a gum, like that Hashem will never leave us. I think we say it by the kind of the gum, lega altim, lega astem, and the gimel mem is also, I think it's Moshe. I forgot what the gimel was, but some sort of matchup, but also with gam, Moshe, Mashiach, Mordechai. Yeah, I have to look it up because I forgot what the gimel was. But just another thought on that would be that I'm saying if you have those two, you could already maybe add Purim Berchai would be Shabbos, because first of all, it says somewhere that Hashem calls them. They used to call them Shabbos, or the same way that I think it says that the same way Shabbos is Kodesh Hashem, Purim is Kodesh Hashem, or Stamaz Tzadik is Mechin of Shabbos, but also because this is more of my own reasoning, but like in certain, like there's sort of like a thing between Yom Kippur and Shabbos. In certain ways, Yom Kippur is greater. In a certain way, Shabbos is greater. In a certain way, Chiv is greater. In a certain way, Torah is greater. Maybe even Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, in some way, maybe in some ways even greater than Mashiach. Maybe like essentially speaking.
Right, I hear. Yeah, I mean
I'm saying because it says Yom Kippurim, that Yom Kippur is like Purim, so it has to be that Purim is higher. And I'm saying we know it says like Moshe, even Moshe is still going to be greater than Mashiach.
Right, yeah. And the Moshe would represent that nice in the Torah, so the sort of Shem Baruch and the Rizal and all these different that were that bechin of revealing Torah. Yeah, might be in a certain sense higher. I hear it. Yeah, very good.
It's very interesting. Just one last thing that I remember, in some like very like I don't know what the word for it would be. I guess like an abstract medrash. I forgot exactly where. I could look it up, but it says that the medrash says that when it says in the Torah and I think it's going on the first time when it says it. It says like zero Shimon or zero Shimon. So maybe in some sense could like essentially be like an essential way, maybe bigger, greater than Mashiach.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I hear.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I find that, I'll send that to you. I think I saw it inside.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. Yeah.
Or quote it. Yeah. Okay, fine. Shkoyach. Very interesting.
My pleasure. Have a wonderful Purim, everyone, and see you all. As Hashem. Kol tov.